Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. It was meant to be a quiet escape into the mountains. No signal, no noise, just peace. But when I arrived at my grandfather's cabin, a shiny padlock and a smug woman from the HOA told me I didn't live there anymore. That was the moment everything changed, and war began. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. I just wrapped a 2-month restoration project in San Francisco, an old brick theater with a roofline that hadn't seen daylight since Truman was in office, and all I wanted was to disappear into the pine-draped silence of my grandfather's mountain. Home. The drive up the ridge was just as I remembered, winding, sharp, half-paved in places, with the kind of hairpin turns that kept the tourists away and the mountain lions guessing. Elevation, roughly 8,000 feet. Air, cold, thin. Honest. Cell signal mercifully non-existent. I reached the final bend where my gravel drive veers off the county road, expecting to see the familiar wrought iron gate and my fated private property, no hunting, no trespassing sign swinging lazily in the breeze. Instead, I saw a gleaming new padlock I didn't install and a professionally printed placard zip-tied to the gate like a corporate ransom note. Aspen Crest HOA repossession in progress. No trespassing. For a few long seconds, I just stared at it. Then I actually laughed, out loud, because it had to be a joke. HOA. Repossession. This wasn't a condo in Phoenix. This was a hand-built timber frame house on land that's been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather carved this place into the mountain with a chainsaw and bare stubbornness after returning from World War II. My name is on the deed. My taxes are up to date. My fence, my lock, my damn mountain. I threw the truck into park and got out, boots crunching on frosty gravel. That's when I saw her. Blonde bob, Patagonia vest, clipboard under one arm, smile like she was already planning where to place the communal picnic tables. She appeared from behind a nearby spruce, flanked by a man in a bright orange safety vest who looked like he'd failed out of mall security training. "Excuse me," she said brightly, as if I were the one interrupting her weekend getaway. "Sir, this is an active transition zone. We'll need you to vacate the area." I blinked. "I live here." She tilted her head. "You lived here. But the Aspen Crest Village HOA has voted to reclaim and reintegrate this property into the community asset pool, per subsection." She flipped her clipboard. 12C, concerning abandoned residential zones and community continuity. I held up a hand. "What in the hell are you talking about?" She didn't flinch. "Our board determined that the home was unoccupied for more than 60 consecutive days, which under our provisional territorial expansion policy classifies it as neglected. As of last Friday, this property has been designated as a shared recreational and preservation parcel." "You're out of your mind," I said, stepping closer. The security guy subtly reached toward his belt. Not for a weapon, I hoped, but the gesture was noted. "This land is not, and has never been, part of your HOA. You're 1.5 miles down the slope. And even if you were next door, which you're not, you don't get to vote to steal someone's goddamn house." She smiled like I'd said something cute. "Well, we actually did vote. It passed 12-1. Your absentee status was noted in the minutes." I stared at her. "That's not how property works." "I can appreciate your confusion," she said, still smiling. "But this area is transitioning to community management. And since your status is unresolved, we'll need you to remove yourself until the stewardship claim is finalized. If you resist, I'll be forced to contact HOA enforcement." "Enforcement?" I laughed again, shorter this time. "Are you talking about mall cop over there? You're lucky I don't call the sheriff right now." Her eyes narrowed and the smile finally cracked. "Then we'll let the sheriff sort it out. Just know you're currently trespassing on a site flagged for municipal reclamation. Any interference will be noted in the report." I got back in the truck, not because I was leaving, but because my hands were shaking and I needed to breathe. I drove about 1 mile back down the ridge, pulled off into a turnout overlooking the canyon, and sat in silence while snow flurries ghosted across the windshield. This wasn't just a mistake. This was coordinated. That lock, the sign, the clipboard speech. It wasn't amateur hour. Somebody had planned this. Somebody thought they could take my house. They were wrong. I came back the next morning, this time with a thick folder of notarized documents, my driver's license, a copy of the original deed signed by my grandfather in 1962, and a printout of my latest property tax payment. all clipped and labeled like I was about to pitch the place to the Library of Congress. In the passenger seat sat Deputy Carla Nguyen from the county sheriff's office. She wasn't particularly chatty on the drive up, but she had a calm, no-bullshit demeanor and the kind of eyes that scanned every inch of the terrain like she'd grown up in these hills. As we rounded the last bend, I noticed two changes. One, the repossession sign was now laminated and framed, like someone thought it added legitimacy. Two, a glossy metal sign had been mounted to the gate. "Welcome to Aspen Crest Community Recreation Lodge. Members only." Carla raised an eyebrow. "That new." "New as of hell, freezing over," I muttered. I parked just short of the gate. As soon as we stepped out, a familiar figure strutted out from the tree line like a community theater production of Dictatorship. The musical. Karen Mott, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, and this time 2 more security volunteers flanking her, both in matching vests. It would have been laughable if it weren't happening to my land. Karen didn't even wait for introductions. "Deputy, this individual is trespassing on a property currently under HOA stewardship. He has been notified." "No, ma'am," Carla cut in. "I'm here because Mr. Sloan contacted us with claims of unlawful entry and occupation of private property. I'm here to verify documents, not adjudicate HOA fantasy law." Karen's lips twitched, but she motioned to one of her volunteers, who immediately handed her a thick manila envelope. She offered it with ceremony. "These are the updated records indicating community reclamation and shared parcel designation. The map now includes this elevation zone, which we voted to absorb under Article 17. Carla took the envelope, but only briefly flipped through its contents. "Who filed these?" Karen hesitated. "They were processed by our regional registry liaison, Mr. Harmon." I froze. Carla stopped turning the pages. "You mean Todd Harmon? That guy was fired 2 years ago for misfiling land transactions in half the county." Karen stiffened. "That's irrelevant. His work was valid at the time of execution." Carla looked at me. "You have your documents." I handed over my folder. She reviewed it quietly, cross-checking the dates, parcel IDs, and ownership lines. She didn't say anything for a minute, just turned slowly toward Karen and held up the deed. "This is legally binding," she said flatly. "Original title chain intact. No signs of sale, transfer, or reclassification. The Sloan family has held this land continuously since 1962. Whatever this is," she held up Karen's envelope like it was a dead fish, "is not recognized by the county assessor or recorder's office." Karen didn't blink. "Well, perhaps it's time they update their systems. In the meantime, we have an obligation to safeguard neglected community assets." "Lady, this isn't a library book. You don't absorb real estate with a vote and a dream journal," I snapped. Carla gave me a look that said, "Dial it back," and turned back to Karen. "Unless you want to explain this at the courthouse, I suggest you unlock that gate and vacate the premises immediately. As of now, your HOA has no legal authority over this parcel." Karen sighed dramatically and waved at one of her henchmen. He unlocked the gate with visible reluctance. We drove through in silence. As I passed the gate, I caught a glimpse of Karen's expression in the side mirror. She wasn't furious. She was calculating. That unsettled me more than if she'd screamed. People who lose fast usually disappear. But Karen looked like she was just adjusting tactics. I parked in the gravel turnaround and stepped out, heart racing. I hadn't seen my house in over 2 months. It looked wrong. The curtains weren't mine. A different truck was parked by the garage. A new welcome mat, one I hadn't bought, sat at the front door. Carla walked up beside me. "You expecting visitors?" I shook my head. No one's supposed to be here." She took a cautious step forward. I followed. From inside the house came the distinct sound of a blender, followed by laughter, multiple voices, a song playing softly from a Bluetooth speaker. I reached for the doorknob. Locked. Carla knocked. A woman answered the door, barefoot, holding a mimosa, wearing one of my flannel shirts like it was a weekend rental robe. Behind her, I saw people lounging on my couch. One guy was setting up a charcuterie board. My charcuterie board. "Can I help you?" she asked. I took a slow breath. "Yeah. I'm Mark Sloan. This is my house. Who the hell are you?" She blinked, unbothered. "Karen said it was available for community timeshare. We booked it for the weekend." Carla stepped forward. "You need to get everyone out of the house right now." The woman hesitated. "Can we at least finish breakfast?" "No." She disappeared inside, and within minutes, the human infestation began trickling out, carrying purses and backpacks like guests checking out of a goddamn Airbnb. One of them had the audacity to ask if the hot tub was still available for future weekends. As they left, I glanced back at Carla. She muttered, "I'll file the preliminary report, but if you've got an attorney, I'd call them now. Because this," she gestured to my house, still reeking of orange juice and entitlement, "this isn't going away quietly." And I knew then, with brutal certainty, that Karen hadn't overstepped by accident. She'd been planning this all along. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the pickup with the engine idling, heat on low, parked at the edge of my own driveway, like some tired sentry at the gates of a war I didn't ask for. The front door to my house stood closed, dark now, but I couldn't shake the image of strangers making themselves at home, drinking cocktails in the living room where my grandfather's shadow still lingered in the floorboards. By sunrise, I was on the phone with Nathan Hale, my attorney. Smart guy, full of quiet rage, the kind that eats bad paperwork for breakfast. He listened without interrupting while I explained what had happened: the fake claim, the community lodge sign, the Airbnb squatters, and Karen. Always Karen. She's running a fraud ring, I said. She used someone else's login to falsify county records. She broke into my house, evicted me on paper, and rented it out like it was a goddamn ski chalet. Nathan exhaled sharply. We're not dealing with HOA overreach here. This is premeditated theft of property and identity. First thing, we file an emergency injunction to block further access. Second, I want a forensic sweep of the title registry. Get me names, dates, digital fingerprints. Third, call in a private investigator. We need to know where your stuff went. So I did. The PI's name was Leo, retired cop with a limp, a mustache that could carry a warrant, and the kind of dry humor that made him instantly likable. I met him that afternoon in a coffee shop in town, gave him the basics, and handed over the only thing I had that mattered, a printed inventory of what should have been inside my home. Leo nodded slowly as I listed items: antique drafting table, military medals, a box of hand-bound journals, grandfather's rifle. "Let me guess," he said. "All sentimental, all irreplaceable." "Pretty much." He scratched his cheek. "You think they pawned this stuff? I think they buried it." Leo got to work, and fast. By the next day, he texted me a grainy photo of a public storage unit about 10 miles south of Aspen Crest. The unit was registered to a shell company, Valley Community Asset Trust, but the payment records were interesting. The listed email address, HOA chair, and the payments, all processed through a personal credit card belonging to Karen Mott. I drove out there with Carla, the same deputy from before. The storage facility manager met us with crossed arms and a fake tan, clearly irritated to be involved in someone else's crime scene. "I need to see Unit B17, Carla said. "I need a warrant," he replied. She smiled coldly. "You're going to get one in about 2 hours. Or you can save yourself the paperwork and let me open the damn door now." He opened the damn door. Inside were 2 love seats, 3 crates marked HOA event use only, and, shoved into the back corner under a cheap plastic tarp, a stack of my belongings: the drafting table, my great-grandfather's Navy footlocker, a bundle of antique blueprints still tied with twine, even the framed photo of my parents on their wedding day, glass cracked from someone's careless boot. Carla took photos. I took inventory. Leo stood with his hands in his pockets and muttered. They weren't even subtle. We locked the unit, sealed it, and tagged it as evidence. But Carla warned me, don't expect charges right away. This'll have to go through the DA. Nathan filed formal theft, fraud, and trespass complaints within 24 hours. Meanwhile, Leo kept digging. What he found next made my stomach churn. Karen had been renting out my home for weeks through private vacation rental platforms, not just Airbnb. The real money was coming from exclusive listings, places that catered to upper-crust tourists who liked the idea of a private rustic retreat. A place owned by the community, maintained by volunteers, and managed by the Aspen Crest HOA. Stared at one listing. There it was, my house. A professionally photographed ad showing my fireplace, my hand-built deck, my bedroom, complete with my own damn comforter folded into a designer triangle. The listing had dozens of 5-star reviews. Comments like, Karen was such a gracious host, and absolutely beautiful, felt like a hidden sanctuary. I felt like throwing my phone into the canyon. Leo traced the payments, thousands of dollars, all routed to Karen's husband's LLC, Mountain Wellness Holdings. They'd disguised it as a wellness retreat and were quietly laundering the rental money through business accounts set up years ago for real estate deals that never materialized. I took all of it, every photo, every invoice, every review, and handed it to Nathan. His eyes widened as he flipped through the evidence. "We're not just going after restitution," he said. "We're going after blood. The problem with war is that it never feels like war at the start. It creeps in under the guise of paperwork, of technicalities, of someone else's misplaced authority." But by the fourth day, I realized this wasn't a dispute. It was a siege, and I was already in the middle of it. Nathan filed for an emergency injunction first thing Monday morning. The county clerk's office flagged the land parcel for litigation within the hour, but that didn't stop Aspen Crest from trying to muscle in. Karen, or someone acting on her behalf, sent a formal HOA notice claiming I had engaged in hostile disruption of a community resource and was being referred for disciplinary measures. They actually used the word disciplinary, like I was a middle schooler who'd put gum under the desk. I framed that letter for court. Meanwhile, Leo kept pulling thread. He found records of backdated documents in the registry's digital log, created under an inactive login belonging to, of course, Todd Harmon. The same Todd Harmon who had been canned 2 years ago for gross clerical misconduct. According to system metadata, someone had used Harmon's credentials to file a zoning reclassification petition and amenity reassignment for my property. That someone, a device registered to an HOA board member's IP address. I drove down to the county records office in person to confirm it myself, and there it was, in black and white. A scanned form, supposedly from me, requesting reclassification of my land to shared HOA nature and wellness use. My forged signature looked like a drunk spider with a broken leg had wandered across the paper. The form had been approved automatically due to a clerical loophole, some old rule that allowed unchallenged petitions to pass, if not contested in 10 business days. 10 days I had been out of state, working on a goddamn museum dome in California. The assistant clerk, a wiry guy with a coffee addiction and an allergy to eye contact, whistled as he scrolled through the approval chain. "Looks like someone knew exactly how to exploit the archive buffer," he said. "Translation?" I asked. They hacked the system, filed garbage through a back door, and relied on bureaucracy being slow and stupid. I called Nathan from the hallway. "We've got forgery, system abuse, chain of custody manipulation, time-stamped login records. You want more? Get copies. We'll subpoena the whole damn database if we have to." Back at the house, I found another surprise. A different car in the driveway. A Volvo. The plates were out of state, Colorado. I parked behind it and walked up, ready to start another round of eviction charades, but no one answered the door. It was already open. Inside, it was clear someone had only just left. A half-eaten sandwich on the table, suitcase in the hallway. Yoga mat rolled out in the living room, next to my fireplace. They hadn't even bothered to clean up the wine glasses. I took pictures of everything, every cup, every suitcase, every scuffed boot mark on the floor. Then I walked out, locked the door, and installed a new deadbolt from my emergency toolbox in the truck. Later that night, Leo called. We just traced the email address tied to the rental listings. It was masked, but bounced once and left a fingerprint. It redirected through a known IP used in 2 separate HOA board meetings, both hosted by Karen. Both times she was logging in from her personal retreat office. "You mean my living room?" "Exactly." Nathan filed for a temporary restraining order the next morning. Not just against Karen, but the entire Aspen Crest HOA board. We included everything: the fake signature, the digital abuse, the renters, the stolen property, the misused funds. We sent it to the judge with an emergency request for expedited hearing. We didn't have to wait long. A court date was set for Friday. And on Thursday morning, while I was boarding up the front windows in preparation for what felt like the next phase of a medieval siege, a white SUV rolled up the driveway. Karen stepped out in white heels and a wrap coat, holding a reusable coffee cup like it was a weapon. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she said, walking toward me. "You've made this very unpleasant for a lot of people." "Good," I said. "I was hoping to ruin your entire week." She looked me up and down like I was a child building a sandcastle in front of a tidal wave. "You'll regret this. This could have been so much simpler." I laughed. "You forged documents. You broke into my house. You rented it out. And you're standing here in heels on my gravel driveway, threatening me with a smile." She took a slow sip of her coffee. "This isn't over, Mark," she said. "We have community support. People want this to be a shared space. You're the outsider here." I didn't answer. Instead, I turned my back on her and finished drilling the board into place. By Friday morning, the driveway was chained off with a 10-foot excavator parked diagonally across the entry. Not because I needed to dig anything, though I was tempted, but because I wanted to make it perfectly clear. I wasn't going anywhere. The excavator belonged to a friend of mine, a contractor who owed me a favor from a renovation job we'd done together on a condemned lodge in Park City. I called in that favor without shame. Right behind it, I installed a 6x3-foot wooden sign painted black with white block letters. "Private property. Fraudulent entry will be prosecuted." Underneath that, smaller but no less clear, "Not part of Aspen Crest HOA." That part was for Karen, because I knew she'd drive up here. I knew she couldn't help herself. Sure enough, by 11 a.m., a small crowd had gathered at the gate. 3 SUVs, 2 sedans, and 1 Subaru Outback with so many bumper stickers, it looked like a protest rally on wheels. Karen stood in front of them like she was hosting a press conference, a microphone clipped to her collar, and a local reporter in tow, complete with camera crew. Leo was already on the ridge above with a drone, recording everything from 50 feet up. We weren't just collecting evidence anymore. We were archiving it. Karen's voice rang out, amplified by a small portable speaker. "Today, we stand united as a community against the erosion of shared values. The Aspen Crest HOA has always believed in stewardship, in communal use, in harmony, but one man—" I flipped a switch. The irrigation system I'd rigged the night before sprang to life, and a fine mist of freezing water hit the crowd right in their Patagonia. Karen yelped and turned her back instinctively as the reporter scrambled to protect her equipment. I stepped into view. "This is private property. You are trespassing. You've been warned." Karen's face turned crimson, her frozen mascara starting to flake. "You're harassing peaceful citizens. This is abuse of water resources during a declared conservation season." "I have a well," I said. "And a permit." She motioned to the camera crew. "Are you getting this? This is what HOA resistance looks like. This is why we need enforcement mechanisms." "Great soundbite," I muttered, already texting Leo to upload the footage to a cloud archive. I wanted this immortalized. This public tantrum, this performance of entitlement. They left wet and angry. Later that day, a letter arrived via certified mail. I read it on my porch, boots up on the rail, coffee going lukewarm in my hand. It was a cease and desist from the HOA board, not to me, but to the County Planning Commission. They were accusing the county of negligence in maintaining accurate zoning designations and demanding a full inspection of Area 14B, which, shockingly, was code for my land. They argued that the county had failed to enforce HOA territorial expansion regulations and that my property had been misclassified due to historical oversight. It was, quite literally, a letter demanding the government change reality. Nathan called 5 minutes after I scanned it to him. "They've gone nuclear. We'll counterfile." The reporter from earlier must have had a change of heart after being doused in well water, because the 6 o'clock news ran a segment titled, "Local Man Battles HOA Over Mountain Home. Who Really Owns the Land?" They interviewed one of Karen's board members, a guy named Dennis, who looked like he'd been dragged out of a wine tasting and threatened with a lawsuit if he didn't show up. Dennis stammered through a claim about restoring harmony and community-led housing equity. Then they cut to me, standing in front of my sign, arms crossed, excavator behind me like some bizarre medieval catapult. "This land has been in my family since 1962, I said. "The only thing I've ever stolen is a parking space at Trader Joe's. If they want my house, they can bring a court order or a goddamn bulldozer." The segment went viral overnight. By morning, my phone was blowing up with messages. Former HOA victims, journalists, even a podcast host who wanted to do a special series on American land wars. But the message that stuck with me came by email from an anonymous Proton Mail account. "Check the county board minutes from 2 months ago. Petition for retroactive zoning map overlay. No name, no signature, just a breadcrumb." I forwarded it to Nathan. He called me at 2 in the morning. They tried to slip in a zoning amendment at a budget meeting. Hidden in a line item under recreational trail expansion, they were trying to redraw the map under everyone's noses. And It was approved, but now it's under investigation. I hung up, heart thudding. This wasn't just Karen anymore. This was a coordinated effort with people inside the system, people who knew exactly where to hide things. They wanted my house. They'd have to drag it off the mountain. By the time Monday rolled around, I had a meeting scheduled with a county investigator. Not just some low-level clerk with a clipboard and a parking lot badge, but a real state-appointed internal affairs agent named Martin DeWitt, whose face looked like it had never smiled without paperwork attached. He showed up in a black government-issued SUV, dark glasses, pressed slacks, and a voice that didn't believe in small talk. "I'm here about the zoning irregularities," he said, stepping out with a leather binder and a tablet already recording. "You're going to want to sit down," I told him. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. The reclassification form with the forged signature, the false logins tied to Todd Harmon's deactivated account, the fabricated HOA documents, Airbnb listings, payment routing through Mountain Wellness Holdings. I gave him a full digital copy of Leo's compiled evidence, including screenshots of the forged zoning overlay amendment hidden in the county budget appendix under trail rehabilitation. Martin took it all in with the emotional range of drywall, asked pointed questions, and then stood up like someone flipping a switch. "I'll need access to your house. Now? Right now." I unlocked the door and led him inside. I hadn't touched much since the squatters were cleared out. I wanted to preserve the scene in case it ever came to this. He walked through the living room, paused by the fireplace, and ran his hand over the mantel where Karen had set up a community lending library box, now half empty. In the kitchen, he opened drawers, found mismatched cutlery, most of it not mine. In the bedroom, he flipped the mattress and uncovered a laminated "Welcome Guests" sign tucked beneath the frame, featuring Karen's face and a QR code that linked, to a rental calendar. "I don't know if this is criminal stupidity or weaponized real estate ambition," he said under his breath. Then we heard tires on gravel. I stepped onto the porch just as 2 sheriff's cruisers rolled up the drive. Carla was in the first. The second was driven by someone I didn't recognize, an older deputy with a clipboard and a tired gait. Behind them, not 5 seconds later, came the worst surprise of the day. A dark blue unmarked vehicle, county seal on the license plate. And inside, a man in a suit, badge visible on his belt. Carla walked up first. "We've got a problem." I didn't like how that sounded. The county court received a sealed motion from Aspen Crest HOA's legal counsel last night. They're requesting an inspection warrant, claiming that your property is unsafe, unmaintained, and structurally hazardous to the community trail project. "What community trail project?" Carla didn't blink. "The one they mapped through your backyard in the zoning amendment they snuck into the budget." The man in the suit stepped forward. "Agent Riley, County Building Code Enforcement. I'm here under provisional authority to conduct a hazard assessment based on the HOA's complaint." Martin stepped forward, flashing his own badge. "And I'm Agent DeWitt, State Internal Affairs. This property is under active investigation for zoning fraud and document forgery. You are not authorized to enter this structure until our audit is complete." Riley looked between us. "I have a sealed judicial order, and I have a state-level override on any civil proceedings involving suspected criminal acts. You want to open that door? Go back to your car, call your superior, and tell them you're about to walk into a felony-level evidence site." The tension hung thick in the cold mountain air. Finally, Riley turned on his heel and stormed back to his car, slamming the door hard enough to echo through the hills. One of the deputies muttered, "Jesus," under his breath. Martin turned to me. "I hope you've got a lawyer who doesn't flinch." "I've got Nathan," I said. "Then buckle up." As the other vehicles left, Martin and Carla remained. We finalized the chain of custody on all physical evidence in the house, the QR code, the laminated welcome signs, a set of keys labeled Guest Suite, the communal sign-in sheet still taped to the inside of the pantry door, listing fake names and email addresses. I handed Carla a thumb drive with backup footage from my new exterior security cams. One of them had captured Karen opening the front gate 2 weeks ago, escorting a couple with luggage inside and waving as they posed for photos on my porch. The timestamp matched the last payment on Leo's rental report. "I'm done waiting," I said quietly. "She's still out there, thinking this is all going to be fine, that she can talk her way through it." Carla nodded. "I'll be honest with you, Mark. We've seen HOA abuse cases before. Fines, discrimination, retaliation. But this is organized real estate fraud wrapped in community slogans. If the DA picks this up the way I think they will, it won't just be Karen going down." "What do you mean?" She pulled out her phone and opened a file. I recognized one of the names immediately, another HOA board member, a man who also worked in the zoning office 3 years ago. The implication hit me like ice water down the spine. They weren't just sloppy, they were connected. Friday morning hit with the velocity of a freight train. Nathan and I arrived at the county courthouse just before 9. It was one of those squat concrete buildings built in the 70s. Function over charm, with flickering fluorescent lights and chairs that looked designed to cause back pain. But I wasn't here for aesthetics. I was here for war. The courtroom was already half full when we entered. On one side sat a cluster of Aspen Crest residents, most in matching vests with HOA logos stitched across the chest, like some kind of suburban cult uniform. On the other side, a smaller group, locals, journalists, and a few off-duty cops I recognized, including Carla sitting quietly in the back row. Karen arrived late, of course. She wore a white blazer, pearl earrings, and an expression so smug it could have curdled milk. Her lawyer was a lanky man named Dawson Reese, who looked like he'd been born in a golf cart and never stopped billing by the hour since. The judge, an older woman with a sharp tongue and no patience for theater, called the court to order. Dawson stood immediately and launched into a speech about community ownership, resource neglect, and the psychological toll of territorialism on homeowners. Nathan let him finish. Then he stood and dropped a bomb. "We are submitting into evidence 76 pages of digital and financial documentation, as well as 12 exhibits showing premeditated fraud, digital forgery, unlawful entry, misuse of a government login, and real estate revenue laundering by the defendant, Mrs. Karen Mott." Dawson scoffed. "Your Honor, this is a civil hearing. These are criminal accusations." Nathan smiled faintly. "And there is a criminal investigation pending. But since your client used falsified records to justify entry and occupation, we are seeking immediate injunctive relief and property restoration on grounds of fraud and trespass." The judge adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Reese, does your client dispute the authenticity of the ownership documents presented by Mr. Sloan?" Dawson hesitated. "We believe those documents are outdated, Your Honor. The land has been repurposed for community development through democratic HOA procedure." The courtroom rustled like someone had just announced a UFO landing. "Democracy," the judge said flatly, "does not override deed law." Then it was my turn. I took the stand, answered questions clearly, firmly. I explained how the property had been in my family for decades, how I returned to find it locked, occupied, and listed online as a rental managed by someone else. I walked the court through the forged documents, the fake signatures, the records Leo and Martin had uncovered, the fraudulent zoning changes hidden in budget language. Nathan showed the jury photos. My belongings stashed in a storage unit rented by Karen, screenshots of guests lounging in my house, the QR codes, the welcome kits, the laminated rules of conduct for visitors. Karen stared straight ahead. No blinking, no flinching, just frozen. Until Nathan pulled up the final exhibit, a time-stamped photo of Karen smiling with 2 renters in front of my fireplace, taken from my own security camera. Karen's lawyer stood. "Objection. That photo was taken without consent." "On private property," Nathan replied. "Owned by my client, while being illegally occupied." The judge allowed it. Karen's expression cracked just slightly, a twitch at the corner of her mouth. The first sign that maybe, just maybe, she understood how far this had gone. Then Martin was called to testify. Calm, unshakable, he confirmed the system breach, the fake documents, the tampering with zoning overlays, the improper access using Todd Harmon's credentials. He explained how the HOA board's internal emails had referenced expanding soft borders and reclaiming absentee assets. "Were these phrases used as part of a broader pattern?" Nathan asked. "Yes," Martin replied. "Multiple HOA boards in the region have explored similar language. Aspen Crest is the first we've caught attempting to implement it through forged legal instruments." The room went silent. Karen's lawyer tried one last Hail Mary, blaming everything on Harmon, on a rogue administrator, even floating the theory that perhaps one of the guests had acted independently. It didn't stick. The judge recessed for deliberation. When she returned 40 minutes later, she didn't read from a script. She just looked over her glasses and said, "I have never in 32 years seen such a cynical abuse of community governance." She ruled in my favor on all counts. Immediate restoration of property rights. HOA barred from further contact. Karen personally liable for damages. The Aspen Crest HOA board placed under emergency audit pending state review. And then, before anyone could stand up, the real moment hit. Two plainclothes officers stepped forward. One of them, DeWitt's partner, approached Karen quietly, pulled a folded document from his coat, and murmured, "Mrs. Mott, you're under arrest for criminal trespass, document fraud, and unlawful conversion of private property. Please stand." She did not. She just sat there, white as drywall, until they gently but firmly guided her to her feet, cuffed her hands, and led her through the side door of the courtroom. She didn't look back. The snow came early this year, light at first, then thick and insistent, blanketing the ridge in a silence that finally felt deserved. I sat on the porch of my grandfather's house, a fresh cedar log crackling in the fireplace behind me, a mug of black coffee cooling in my hands, and a satisfaction in my chest I hadn't felt in months. The chaos had ended. The land was mine again. Officially, unambiguously, and permanently. The final court ruling had arrived in the mail 2 weeks after Karen's arrest. It came in a thick envelope with gold-trimmed tabs and the weight of bureaucracy behind every staple. Inside was a certified declaration restoring my sole ownership, sealing off all claims from the Aspen Crest HOA in perpetuity, and ordering them to issue a public retraction and apology. They tried to negotiate, claim they could release a statement of clarification. Nathan shut that down faster than a bear trap. "No wiggle room," he'd said. "They want to steal land? They get to choke on a headline." The retraction went live across local news outlets, social media, and even made it onto a syndicated HOA watchdog blog titled "Crestfallen: How One HOA Got Crushed by Greed." It was perfect. As for Karen, she didn't go quietly. After the hearing, her legal team scrambled to reduce the charges, claiming emotional distress, miscommunication, digital manipulation by unknown third parties. The DA didn't blink. They slapped her with 12 felony counts, including forgery of legal documents, unlawful entry and occupancy, real estate fraud, tampering with county infrastructure, failure to declare income from short-term rental schemes. Each charge came with its own stack of evidence. Leo had seen to that personally. Karen's arrest made regional news. Her mugshot ran next to a photo of her smugly holding a HOA President of the Year plaque. The contrast was art. The sentence, 12 years. Her lawyer called it disproportionate. The judge called it merciful. In the meantime, Aspen Crest HOA was stripped of its charter by the state. A court-appointed trustee was brought in to oversee dissolution. Their assets, bank accounts, reserves, even a shared snowplow were liquidated to pay legal fees and restitution. I didn't want the money, not really. But Nathan insisted on damages, and the court awarded me just under $680,000, citing emotional distress, property damage, and reputational harm. Some of that went into repairs. A lot went into security. Today, my home is a fortress, but not the kind with barbed wire and paranoia. It's smart, subtle, motion-triggered cameras with real-time alerts, biometric locks on every entry, a reinforced gate, double-hinged, with a camera that uses facial recognition software, custom-built by a tech buddy from Berkeley who owed me a favor. I installed one last sign just below the lens. "This is private property. It is not for sale." It never was. Inside, things are slowly returning to normal. I've reclaimed every room, recovered nearly all of my belongings. Even the old Navy footlocker made it back, a little scratched, but intact. The fireplace glows again in the evenings, the same way it did when I was a boy, sitting next to my grandfather as he told stories about the war and how he'd picked this spot because it was the last place you could hear your own thoughts. I hung. The court ruling above the mantel framed in oak, and just beneath it, a brass plaque I had custom made, simple, clean, permanent. This is my home, forever. The neighbors from Aspen Crest don't come around anymore. Their road has its own problems now. Leadership elections, budget audits, angry homeowners realizing their fees funded a private real estate scam. The new board president, a timid man named Ron who used to mow Karen's lawn for $5 a week, sent me a Christmas card last month. It said, "You were right. I didn't reply. but not everyone stayed away. A few weeks after the final ruling, there was a knock at the gate. I checked the camera before opening. A woman stood there in jeans and a navy coat, hands buried deep in her pockets, shoulders hunched like a schoolgirl waiting outside the principal's office. Karen. She looked older, smaller, like someone who hadn't slept in months. "I'm not here to argue," she said, not even raising her voice. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." I didn't say anything at first. Then I nodded. She turned to leave, but I stopped her. "There's a barbecue on the 4th of July, I said. "You're not invited." "But that apology? I heard it." She nodded back, said nothing, and walked away down the mountain road, her footsteps vanishing into the snow. This year, the 4th of July barbecue was the biggest I've ever hosted. Friends, family, a few of the honest locals from town. The grill ran hot, the beer ran cold, and the kids ran wild through the meadow. No one mentioned the HOA. No one needed to. The house stood behind me like a monument to resilience, its timber bones older than most people's memories. And I just watched the sunset melt over the valley, knowing with quiet certainty that no one would ever take this from me again.